A recent winter in Wapusk National Park on the western edge of Hudson Bay, south of Churchill, Manitoba. A wildlife photographer working alongside regional biologists captures something that should not be possible on the open tundra. In the frame, a small polar bear cub, perhaps a week outside its den, is being killed. Not by another bear, not by an orca, not by a human hunter, by a wolf. Wolves, actually. A pack of them moving across snow marked with fresh polar bear tracks. The apex predator of the Arctic, the animal that supposedly has no predator, is being hunted. That is the sentence official ecology cannot easily accommodate. Polar bears are the largest terrestrial carnivore on Earth. Adult males can exceed 600 kilograms. They are listed as vulnerable by the IUCN and the Western Hudson Bay subpopulation, the one that dens in Wapusk, has been in documented decline for years. Wolves, by contrast, live at the northern edge of the boreal forest, thinner in these latitudes than they are further south, moving in small packs across the tundra transition. On paper, the two species barely overlap. In practice, at this specific place, in this specific season, they now do. Parks Canada manages the denning ground. Environment and Climate Change Canada tracks the bears. Neither agency describes wolves as a general threat to polar bears as a species. That distinction matters more than it sounds. What the footage records is not adult predation. It is not a wolf taking down a fully grown white bear. It is something narrower and stranger. Wolves killing cubs at or near the den in the weeks after emergence, when the smallest bears in the world are still learning to walk on the surface of the snow. Nothing about that is supposed to happen, and yet here is the recorded evidence. The immediate temptation is to reach for a simpler explanation. Wildlife biologists heard the reports before they saw the frames, and they tested every alternative first. Was it a mother bear killing a rival's cub? Adult male polar bears do sometimes kill and eat cubs. That is documented, ugly, and real. But the tracks in the snow around these kills were not bear tracks. The gait was wrong. The prints were smaller, narrower, arranged in the loping single-file pattern of a canid pack. Was it orcas? Orcas have been observed taking swimming polar bears in other regions of the Arctic, but Hudson Bay in denning season is frozen or freezing, and dens sit on land. Was it human hunters? Polar bears in Wapusk are legally protected inside a national park, and no carcasses had been butchered. Every easy answer collapsed. What remained was the difficult one. Wolves at polar bear dens are not a completely new observation. Inuit and Cree hunters in the western Hudson Bay region have described wolves shadowing bear country for a long time, and scattered 20th century field notes mention wolf tracks near maternity areas. Those older reports were treated as curiosities. They described presence, not predation. Nobody had a frame of a wolf actually killing a cub. That gap between anecdote and evidence is exactly the gap that recent camera work has closed. Most of the documented incidents in the current record trace back to a small circle of wildlife photographers and researchers working out of Wapusk, most notably Daniel J. Cox and colleagues at Natural Exposures, whose long-lens documentation of wolf activity at bear denning grounds around 2020 forced the conversation out of the unusual sighting category and into recorded event. The images and video are specific. The location is specific. The species is specific. What the photographs show is not a chance encounter. It is a pack learning that something small and slow-moving emerges from the snow every spring. The photographs did not fall out of nowhere. Researchers monitoring dens in the Wapusk area had begun to notice wolves lingering near maternity zones during spring emergence, not passing through but returning, testing, watching. Once the observations were paired with images of actual kills, the pattern became difficult to explain away as coincidence. Something had shifted, and the shift was not one bad year. It was a habit forming in animals that live long enough to teach it. To understand why the pack is there at all, you have to look at ice. The western Hudson Bay is one of the fastest warming pieces of the Arctic. The sea ice that pregnant female polar bears rely on breaks up earlier in summer and reforms later in autumn. Every year, on average, the bears spend more time on land. The females that den in Wapusk emerge with newborns in late winter or early spring, and they have to lead those cubs across open tundra to reach the ice where they can finally hunt seals again. That walk has always been dangerous. It is now longer, and it happens during weeks when the bear's hunting is delayed and the wolf's hunting is not. Consider what emergence actually looks like. A female polar bear digs her maternity den into a snowdrift or peat bank in late autumn. She gives birth around midwinter, usually to twins, sometimes to a single cub, rarely to 3. The cubs weigh under a kilogram at birth. Blind, nearly hairless, entirely dependent on stored maternal fat. The mother stays underground for months. When she finally breaks the roof of the den in late February or March, her cubs are 3 or 4 months old, roughly the size of small dogs. They can walk. They cannot run. They cannot climb. Between the den and the sea ice, there can be days of open tundra, with no cover, no burrow, no vertical escape. Wapusk holds one of the densest concentrations of polar bear maternity dens on Earth. That was always a strength of the population. Concentrated denning means the young are born in a place biologists can monitor. What no one fully modeled was that concentration is also an address. If a pack of wolves learns to hunt the corridor between the dens and the coast in a hungry season, the density that once looked protective starts to look like the opposite. None of this makes wolves the villain. Wolves do what wolves do. They follow prey, they exploit opportunity, they learn what works and repeat it. A single mother bear defending 1 or 2 cubs against a coordinated pack is a physical mismatch the mother does not always win, particularly when the cubs are only weeks old and cannot outrun anything. The bear's advantage, enormous size, enormous strength, belongs to the adult. It does not fully transfer to the newborn. That is the biological hinge on which the whole story turns. Here is where the mystery begins to reinterpret itself. When people ask what is hunting polar bears in Churchill, they usually imagine something enormous, something new, something almost mythic. The real answer is the smallest of the plausible options. The predator was already there. It was always there. What changed was the calendar. There is a useful comparison in another animal that has been walking north for the same reason. Grizzly bears, brown bears, have expanded further into the historic range of polar bears over the past 2 decades, and the 2 species have interbred in a handful of documented cases, producing the Pisley hybrids that briefly went viral in the scientific press. That story is not the same as this one, but the mechanism is the same. Climate is not itself the hunter. Climate is the door opener. Wolves walked through it. Grizzlies walked through it. The Arctic is now a place where the boundaries drawn on 20th century maps quietly no longer hold. What the Wapusk footage proves is specific and limited. It proves that wolves in this region are capable of killing polar bear cubs and are actually doing it. It proves that the 2 species overlap at the denning ground during the emergence window. It proves that the no predator line in the polar bear entry of a general wildlife encyclopedia needs an asterisk when you narrow the frame to the first weeks of life. What it does not prove is that wolves threaten polar bears as a species. Adult polar bears are still, by every reasonable measure, untouchable. Wolves are not driving population decline in western Hudson Bay. The ice is doing that, and the ice does not need help. What wolves are doing is exploiting a vulnerability that the ice created. The 2 facts are related. They are not the same. Go back to the opening frame. The small cub in the snow. The pack tracks looping around the den. The photographer lowering the long lens because there is nothing more to record. Read that image again with everything the record now shows. It is not the collapse of an apex predator. It is the shrinking of an assumption. The species at the top of the Arctic food chain still sits there, unchallenged in adulthood. But the individual, as a cub, in the wrong week, on the wrong stretch of tundra, has an enemy it did not have a generation ago. That enemy did not have to grow larger or stranger. It only had to arrive earlier and stay longer and learn. Somewhere in Wapusk this coming spring, a female polar bear will push her way out of a snow den with 2 small cubs behind her. She will start the walk to the ice. On the ridge above her, in prints that are narrower than her own and moving in a loping, patient line, something will already be watching. The top of the food chain still holds. It just has a soft edge now, and that edge is very small, and it is only a few weeks old.